porn addiction, mindfulness meditation, scratching an itch. What do these things have in common other than the fact that scratching an itch is also a euphemism for masturbation? Okay, so one thing that happened to me a lot when I was learning how to meditate and starting to practice mindfulness-based meditation on a regular basis or a semi-regular basis. And I'm sure if you've practiced meditation, it's happened to you, and it's actually happened to me right now as I try to pay attention to filming this video and talk to you, is I'm feeling a bit of an itch. You know, my face was a bit itchy, and I felt the need to scratch it. Now, when I was first learning how to meditate, one of the things I had the habit of doing was I felt like I needed to not move, because this is meditation, and I'm supposed to be sitting still and not moving and be all stoic and whatnot. And I was doing my best to ignore the itch. From there, I kind of, and this is over the course of months. This isn't like a single meditative session. This is over the course of months. You know, first I would try to ignore it. Sometimes it would like ruin my whole session. I'd just stop meditating. Similar to like maybe like a pain in the neck. I'd be like just trying to ignore the pain in the neck. And if like I got to the point where if I moved, I'd just like quit the session. I'd just be like, I'll just come back to it next time. I'd get like so angry that I couldn't like sit still, that I'd just give up. So then, after about 3 months of this, maybe it was longer, I'm not entirely sure, I started to try and sit with the itch and sit with the pain. This almost just made it worse, because I still wasn't willing to do anything with it. And I would like eventually scratch the itch or eventually do something with the pain, and I would feel a sense of failure, like I had fucked up. And so eventually this is why you should watch guided meditation stuff from time to time, even if you're somebody who has their own regular practice and has been learning mindfulness for a long time. I came across a video, and it was a guided practice, and at the end of the practice there was a Q&A session, and someone asked a question kind of about like, you know, having an itch and all that, and like feeling the need to move around, or even needing to like readjust your legs because you're sitting cross-legged and they're starting to fall asleep. And the instructor essentially just said like, look, sometimes you'll have like that itch come up, and if you are attempting to practice mindfulness, you can kind of start to practice it in a way that you would take into the real world. So like something you would do in a moving meditation. So if you feel the itch, just do your best to acknowledge the itch, feel the itch, and then mindfully, with awareness, choose to scratch the itch and feel your arm move up to wherever place you need to, and feel the sensation of scratching the itch. Do your best to be aware of like, what does it feel like to have this itch satiated? What does it feel like as it's going away? Was that unique, that cross section between like it being itched and being itchy? And do your best to pay attention to all of these things. Now, this is where we swing back into porn, masturbation, all that fun stuff. I think one thing that happens to a lot of people when they begin meditative practices, especially if they're coming at it from a spiritual or religious place, is they start to demonize some of their old bad habits, their old addictions, and their itches, and they'll look at something like masturbation or porn and they'll do their best to stop. And so when they do have an itch come up, they'll do their best to ignore it, and then at a certain point where they're ignoring it, they'll eventually snap and they'll scratch the itch. And the thing is that as you continue this journey, I invite you to give yourself permission to scratch the itch, but don't look away. You know, if you play too many video games, don't just try to ignore the video games until you fucking snap one day and you binge playing video games for 3 months and never leave your bedroom, and then you wake up out of this coma of addiction. Like, go through it mindfully. Like, you know, maybe you still end up in a 3-month video game coma to some degree, but try and pay attention to what it's like to go through that. Try to actually experience it so that you have some form of reference later on to go, I don't want to go through that again. I didn't enjoy that. Or that was amazing, I want to do it again. If you have a porn addiction, pay attention next time. Watch what you're watching. Investigate it. Ask the questions as you're going, like, is this something that's, you know, how does this feel? What is it like watching myself be aroused by what I'm doing right now? Maybe it heightens the pleasure. Maybe it makes it worse. Maybe you look at yourself and go, wow, is this really what I'm like? Or you go, oh, this is what I'm like. But experience it, don't look away. But even going back to my examples of my meditations, just with something as simple as scratching an itch, an actual itch, there's no moral obligation, none, about scratching an itch while I'm meditating. There's no person in this world who's telling me, you're gonna burn in hell if you scratch this itch. But yet, I felt like I couldn't do it, to the point of feeling like I needed to ignore it, to the point of eventually either just scratching the itch, which could lead to maybe even ruining my whole meditation session, which, if you want to think about like a no faps streak, if you're someone who's trying to stop meditating or stop fapping as you start these mindfulness practices, I mean, it would be like trying to ignore that until getting to the point where you finally fuck up because you were just ignoring it, and you finally had a moment of just distraction, and when you went in and did it anyway, you know, if you do that mindfully, it's a lot easier to get back on the horse. If I choose to scratch an itch and feel what that's like and experience that, it's a lot easier to move right back into a mindful, calm place. But when I was doing my best to ignore it and not do that, by the time I scratched the itch, I was so angry and disappointed in myself that I just stopped meditating. And it took me years to be able to like get to a point to where I'd have an itch and just be like, oh, okay. And sometimes I just, you know, sometimes now I can just sit with them and watch them be there, and sometimes they even just go away. But it was giving myself permission to experience what it was like to just have the itch, scratch the itch, experience what scratching the itch was like, that I got to a point where I could actually be with the itch and watch it go away on its own. And if you've, you know, you watch porn, if you even have a drug addiction, I invite you to, even the next time you go to do drugs, like, don't ignore it. Really investigate what's it like to go from this sober state of mind, or this fiending state of mind where you just need this substance. What's it like to make that transition? You know, experience that change where you go from one state of mind to the other, and what's it like to make that shift? And then now, what does it feel like now that you're on the other side? And just experience these things. Investigate these things. What's it like to spend the money on the drugs? Don't ignore it until you find yourself out of money. Experience what it's like. Be grateful to be able to spend the money and have the experiences and really experience them. And that's going to be how you learn. That's going to be how you get to the point where you make different choices and make different decisions. Is you're going to pay attention to the experiences you're having, and that'll give you the wisdom and the guidance you need to move forward. I love y'all. My name's Ryan. Peace.